Hi, everyone. Um, Today's session is a little special because I'm joined by our Vyūha team here, and we're all looking forward for the conversation that we are going to have. So, before we get started, I would request all of you to introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Thanks for doing this. It's such a pleasure to, discuss some of the most interesting ideas that are haunting us, that also, in a sense, haunt many, initial practitioners of IKS, teachers, educators, parents, right? So through this we are trying to just explore this with whatever little we have come through, whatever little we are beginning to learn and practice. Hope it is of use to you. A little bit about myself. I am a student and teacher of yoga in the Krishnamacharya tradition. My name is Namrata. I happen to be one of the co-founders of Vyūha. At Vyūha itself, I try to hold the hat of, someone who's able to be a bit sensitive to energy, and also someone who is curious to know about facts, about, the deeper causation of things. So I wear the hat of both energy and causality here. And with that, I would tag Samskriti. Do tell us a little bit about yourself.
Namaste. I am Samskriti. I am from Karnataka, and I am a very curious person, and I am really, really passionate about music, Sanskrit, and Indian knowledge systems. I work as a research associate with all of you at Vyūha, and yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here. I am also studying masters in Sanskrit. I would tag Nidhi.
Namaste, I am Nidhi, and I am just very happy to be here. I am a student of Masters in Indian Philosophy, and I really like. So, while we're speaking of Indian knowledge system, I like to know what is knowledge. That's the entire domain I really like to work in. And at Vyūha, I am also working as a curriculum designer, a research associate, which has given me so many insights and ideas which I was also not aware of. So I'm very happy to be the part of this conversation. And I would like to tag Aishwarya.
Namaste, I'm Aishwarya. I'm a student of Vedanta. I'm also part of Chinya Mission, and at Vyūha, I'm the project manager. I'm passionate about music. I love reading books. I like trekking, and I am also into dancing. So I'll tag Hari here. Hear you, Hari.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Namaste, everyone. My name is Sri Hari. I am a storyteller. I love being with children. And the question I hold for myself is, how can I be a medium of learning, fun, and joy? And how can I create spaces to enable such joyful learning experiences for children? And I think that was what led me, to be a part of this movement in Indian knowledge system, and also forming this organization called Vyūha Learning Labs. I'm super enriched every day working with all of you as part of our efforts to mainstream Bharatiya learning in mainstream schools.
Okay. So, as many of you know, we work closely with schools. We engage with students, we engage with teachers, with educators, and institutions across different contexts. And throughout our experience, we've come across some of these questions again and again from all of them. So, that's when we thought that, why not all of us sit together and try to answer these questions, come up with perspectives, sharing our perspectives from our experiences. So this is what the series is going to be about. So in today's session, we'll be picking one question from the most commonly asked questions, from the educators, per- particularly regarding taking IKS to schools. So today's question is, isn't IKS mythology dressed up as knowledge? So let's get started.
Very interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah. So Samskriti, do you want to share your perspectives?
Sure. So, I would like to start by assuming that our definition of myth or mythology is so myth is a lie or something that is not true or something that can just exist in stories and not in the real world. So mythology is collection of these myths or study of these myths. Taking this to be the definition, if we look into the definition of what is IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems or IKS is basically the knowledge that was developed, cultivated, or processed in the Indian region systematically. So, the definition of mythology and Indian knowledge systems, they are itself they are themselves very different from each other. So, when the definition themselves are very different and stand apart, we cannot say that IKS is mythology dressed up as knowledge. So, and in Indian knowledge systems, there are so many things, and the shastras that we study or that are there. So they were not just someone just sitting and writing them and everyone accepting it. So it happened over a long period of time. There were a lot of discussions, arguments, and then finally, after a lot of trial and errors and application, then only it was accepted. So obviously, this shows us that it is not something that just cannot exist. It was practical and applied, and it continues to apply even in today's life. For example, if we want to see, if we take haldi or turmeric, we know that it is useful medically. So it is found in our texts. So is it a myth? No, we have a living practical knowledge that it is not a myth. It is useful even today. So on the basis of definition and on the basis of pramana, assuming that mythology set of lies or just existing in stories, we cannot come to this conclusion, is what I would like to say.
That's beautiful. Like you've addressed what each of the, like what myth is and what IKS is. Just clearly define all of those terms for us. Thank you so much, Samskriti. Nidhi, would you like to add on your thoughts?
Sure, sure. I really appreciate like how Samskriti just divided the perfect definitions of what myth is and what IKS is actually. So when she was speaking, I just one thought came to my mind that I just have one particular question. Like when we say decimal system, zero, all these are myth-free concepts. We take them as true because it's verifiable, etc., etc. So if we are taking that as true, then the culture which actually engineered these concepts, why are we taking that as myth? What is the concept behind that? Are we limiting our understanding of IKS as just something which is stories, which is not relevant to whatever is given in our daily life or the science or maths? The answer to this, at least from what I have read so far, is that IKS or Indian Knowledge System is empirical science. It's completely verifiable and it's completely observable also. You speak of zero, it's given in our text. What the way Samskriti said. You speak of any science, medical science, wait, engineering. All of this was given way back then we know or we existed basically. So it's back to, I mean, long time back. So we cannot literally say it's a myth. If it's a myth, it's not true. It's a fairy tale. But it's not a fairy tale. It's very much verifiable, right? And I can also think of certain examples in our daily life or nature also. So IKS, I think, is a medium for us to connect with our nature, with our surroundings, with the environment, and not just a limitation to certain stories. So that is one particular point that I would like to make. And I agree with Samskriti the way she said it's relevant and applicable in today's life also, because we see the brands, the foreign brands are adapting IKS. They are taking ideas from our system, and we here are stuck in this concept of myth and no, what is not myth. So yeah, that's what the point is.
Very true. Completely agree. When you told that, we can still see it in today's times, of course, like there are hundreds of examples that, we can still see even today, like the Iron Pillar in Delhi or Ayurveda. So many examples in Ayurveda. I mean, I think this is just one or two that's coming on top of my mind, but of course, there are hundreds more. Another thing that came to my mind when you were sharing about, it's more in your perception, right? Like if you only think it's just myth, then it's restricted to that. But of course, there are so many hundred other examples which are very relevant and applicable to our lives today. The main, I would say, the distinct factor, what classifies as a myth is one thing about myth is many of the things there are unreasonable. Like, one thing leads to another, and there's no valid reason on what led to another, right? But when we talk about IKS, we have laws. Like, everything is very documented, everything runs on principles, everything has a reason. Like, we have certain laws, like, for every effect, there is a cause behind it. So it's a systematic study. And like what Samskriti told, it's a very time tested knowledge. It's been there over many years. A lot of debates and discussions have gone under it. So it's a very well documented knowledge. So I think the whole idea to call it myth is exactly like what you told. It's in one's perception of only looking at it at a very small lens. I think that also comes from people looking at stories in IKS, like how is this even possible? And then just call it a myth. But then I think it's in one's capacity to dig deeper and understand what is the story behind that metaphor that the story is talking about. So I think one has to take that step in, like going one step ahead and understanding what is the concept that is being explained through the stories or whatever people call it as myth. So that's what I think about the question. Hari, do you want to add something to this?
Sure. Sure. I think these are super important, interesting ideas. This is where I think I would like to quote Joseph Campbell on his definition to what myths and mythology is. So he says we still like to make up stories just as our ancestors did, which use personification to explain the great forces of our existence. So, such stories which explain how the world began or where the sun goes when it sets, we call myths, right? So, this definition, I think, expands the understanding of what a myth itself serves in the larger context of learning and education. Now, having said that, I would like to, highlight a few aspects. So, when we speak of Western knowledge, Newtonian mechanics was true until it wasn't, right? In the sense, uh, um, only after it was discovered and spoken of was it considered true. Also, economic models, a lot of it we look at various assumptions and we call it as objective science. Any economic theory starts with an assumption saying all humans act rationally, right? But what are these? If we were to call it a myth, we could, because these are some assumptions we make, ideological assumptions on which we build further knowledge, right? So I think the question really isn't whether is there a knowledge system perfectly myth free, because I don't think there is. Everything has some amount of myth, some amount of story, personification, in order to get to certain deeper aspect or principle in to do with life, to do with universe itself. right? And also, in IKS, if we speak about it, there are a lot of lived tacit knowledge on what herbs we need to use, when, etc. When we speak of that alone, we almost instantly demand for RCTs. What's the research? What is the proven, theory behind this? How do we have, control experiments to prove this? But what about Western folk medicine? Same thing, for centuries they followed, but we refer to as it as proto-science and not really, speak of RCTs, etc. So I also see this kind of an asymmetry in judgment uh, as to what we refer to as, valid knowledge itself and what we credit as knowledge, right? So that also I wanted to highlight. And, to close my thoughts, I would say mythology and knowledge never existed really as a binary in our system, in my understanding, because we have the Chaturveda Vidyasthanas, the all the things that form the corpus of our knowledge system, and in that we also have the Itihasa Purana, which refers to the epics and also the allegorical stories. Now, I know the word, but as soon as we say stories, we reduce it to just some narratives, etc. But it was again a pedagogical framework or a toolkit to understanding something deeper, like we all discussed just now, right? So this binary, I don't think ever existed. If not, we wouldn't consider it a critical part of the knowledge repository we have in our system. And so my final submission would be, every knowledge tradition, right? Every knowledge tradition has the mythological or the narrative based approach and also the empirical. So the right response is, how do I critically engage with whatever I am looking at and pursuing, and not really completely reject or blindly accept something. So the critical engagement is the essence, I would say.
Beautifully put. Namrata, do you want to add on something to what Hari said?
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit on this. My 2 cents is just, I think I'm just going to draw from what each of you shared. Yeah. I think the whole idea that mythology, what is mythology, right? Our understanding of what exactly is a mythology itself, Samskriti, defined myth. But I also think it's important to define mythology. Unfortunately, our understanding of mythology is similar to myth. It's just an extension or an expansion of a myth. So inherently, our perception of mythology is, it is untrue. That is why it is a story. But if you really think about it, can we really make a story? Can we even draw something about anything which is not in our perception? Can we make a story about something that really doesn't exist? I don't think any human being is capable of doing that, firstly. Secondly, to go into such vast amounts of detail about some of this further, adds to the impossibility of something to be untrue. And more importantly, I think the laws of nature itself, so complex, so vast, it's just not possible to explain in just some linear equations, or in small statements. So I think this fundamental idea that the laws of nature are so dynamic, are so deep, that they require layers of understanding, and therefore the necessity of mythology or of stories, like Hari and Aishwarya also shared, as one, a pedagogy, but also stories as a medium to sort of understand the mythology, the universe itself. I don't think it is possible for this mind, where it is right now, to be able to grasp the entirety until it is threaded intricately through the device of a story. So what I want to basically share is myth is being untrue, and mythology, therefore being an extension of myth, may not be a complete understanding of IKS. I think IKS does have hard, empirical, verifiable facts, as you know, our team has shared. But for those ideas, for those concepts that are beyond our rational, logical perception at this point, we do need those stories to bridge into those realms of the universe that we are not capable of understanding. I think there have been many scientists across the world who have explored this to great extent. Even they actually, you have Carl Sagan, and you have Christopher Nolan, who goes into deep detailing of scientific myths or scientific mythologies. Why would they do that? Isn't it? So this is what I feel. And but at the same time, it is also not, I think, completely fair to say that, you know, everything in IKS is just about stories. There are, as a lot of us shared, hard facts, and to understand the deeper essences, we need stories as a medium. So I think it's a bit of both, and I think the integration is what makes a wholesome understanding.
Correct. Couldn't agree more. So I think, yeah, so at least I had a fair idea before, we started a discussion that, okay, is IKS mythology or not? But now I clearly know that, okay, this is what IKS, boundaries of IKS is, and this is what mythology is. Most importantly, the difference between a myth and a mythology. So I think these are some of the most basic things that we'll have to understand even before we ask some, a question like this. So
Um, I would like to add just a little more. So one is continuing what Namrata said about, there are a lot of scientists who have discovered, who are currently also discovering, taking from these. For example, R.N. Nayangar sir from Jain University, he is drawn from the Puranas, and he has worked on seismic regions in India. So a lot of work on physics and even aerospace. So a lot of these things are, even today there is a lot of research that's going on. One, and second thing, I also wanted to remember for myself and for all of us that, we never call this mythology. We never refer to these things as mythology. And we even have categories. Okay, Puranas, something that belong to the ancient. Okay, we have Itihasa, this happened, thus happened. And then there are Panchatantras. Okay, these are the Tantras. So there are different categories and different definitions in what we refer to, in our knowledge systems. So I think we should also remember that aspect.
Super important, Samskriti. I think that is the real decolonizing exercise that, you know, we often hear about. Understanding our knowledge systems using our lens. The
Yeah.
lens of myth versus mythology versus science is not a lens we had or we ought to have. And as Hari also shared, this lens of this fragmented idea is not ours. So, using a foreign lens to view our realities is obviously not a clear perspective or understanding of the truth. And yes, I think the more we ask these questions of ourselves and of others, there's a better chance for us to go into it a little deeper than what it might look on the surface.
Yeah. This
This
was a
was super
wonderful.
enriching.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was hoping we can also hear some thoughts from the viewers and comments as well. They could also join this conversation.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll come back again with another question the next time, and we should do this more often.
Can't agree more.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone,
Thank
for joining.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.